to agenda for this evening, because I know Heather sent him a copy and I know I sent him a copy. So, and Chris, I did want to thank you also for putting information in the OneDrive. It's and especially makes it easy to find the policies in there. So as we start to talk about some of those going forward, it'll be great to be able to access them there. And one of the other things that I saw that was in there while I was in there, so I'm going to take it out of order, is the meeting minutes from October 8th. Did people have a chance to review them?
Probably not. I just added them this morning. But Chris did.
I did.
Well, I did.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very long meeting. That was a 3-hour meeting.
Yeah, it was. It was a very long meeting. They were very, yes. I thought you did a great job capturing the minutes.
Okay. I will work on all of them on the Christmas break. So we're up to date for the first meeting next year.
Okay.
Okay.
I should ask you, because I can't remember if I asked you to do this or not, but when they are approved, do you send them on to Ellen Griffin?
Yeah, and Ellen is out of the office now until next week. So she'll post a couple from that. And then when I send these to her, she'll post them next week.
Okay.
Yep, but
All
yes.
All right, so I've breezed right past, actually, let me go back because I didn't read the Zoom thing. So, all right.
Where is?
Good evening. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and this meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to COVID-19, is currently following the guidance from Lunenburg Board of Health, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. That being said, we will be, this meeting does have public comment. Public comment will be available at the beginning of the meeting, and then public comment period will be available again at the end of the meeting. So if you're watching this meeting and you wanted to make a public comment at the end of the meeting or by the end of the meeting, you're welcome to go to the town calendar on the website and log into Zoom through the link there in the agenda, or you can send an email to tburcfield@lunenburgonline.com, and we would read the comment if it's properly signed and sent. With that, any votes that we take will be by roll call. And I think there's really nothing much else to say. I think anybody who's attending this meeting is familiar with the fact that we've been doing Zoom meetings now for the better part of a year. So we'll just continue on with, since I was taking them out of order. Does anybody feel comfortable making a motion regarding the meeting minutes, or do you want to wait? Sure. And I'll just ask Jay and Dave to.
I haven't looked at them yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't either, so.
Okay, so we'll put those off. But thank you, Heather. They look good to me.
Okay.
Heather's usually very thorough, so if there had been enough that had already read it, I would have agreed with it, but unfortunately, we don't have enough.
Yeah,
Well,
Peter's not here. I don't know if Peter looked at them either.
Yeah. Okay, so with that then, do we have any, we have no announcements other than Evan Waters is the newest member of the Finance Committee. And also, again, I'll just let you know that I did forward off the copy of the budget calendar that Heather sent to me this evening. So you can fill out your dance card for the spring. You're going to be busy every Thursday night forever. And then with that, I'll just open it up. Does anybody have any announcements or public comment that they would want to make from the committee? Seeing none. Does anybody have any public comment or announcement they want to make from the public? And I see none. So moving right along. I put an agenda item on to just review the special town meeting, just in case anybody had any, anything that they wanted to bring up regarding the special town meeting in terms of how it was handled, or how you might want to see things go differently at future town meetings in terms of the finance committee participation. So that's just an open agenda item. So if anybody has anything they wanted to say about it, I don't really remember it. It seems like such a long time ago. Okay, so nobody has any comments about that, so that's fine. I put town contracts on the agenda just, and I did give Heather a bit of a heads up on this, that I was going to bring this up. But one of the things that struck me, and this really belongs with fiscal policies as a potential discussion, but one of the things that struck me during the discussion around approving the
Here in the clerks, the
all of
contracts.
the contracts going forward, that to me, it seemed like and I could be wrong and I could be misreading this, but to me, I'm gonna let Evan in, okay. One of the issues that struck me was that we were really getting bogged down in, like, should there be a 1% increase? Should there be a 0.5% increase? Should there be a no % increase? And I don't know whether this is something that the town would even be the least bit interested in pursuing as a discussion. But to me, it's not a cost of living adjustment if it's not attached to a cost of living indicator. And I would almost prefer to see the town look into developing a policy around, in setting up contracts, especially for the going out 3 years, that there is no play in those numbers, that basically, regardless of which union you belong to, the town votes a COLA in advance based on what the cost of living index is for a particular period at a particular time. And that anybody who's a contracted employee by the town would get that increase in that year of their contract. And that's just, I'm just throwing that out there, and people can shoot me down. That's fine.
But would that be for the schools too, or just the town side?
I would hope it would be for the schools too.
Across the board.
That basically, to me, it's, and again, I could be reading it completely wrong and it's got nothing to do with the cost of living, and that it's not really a cost of living adjustment. But to me, it would just be interesting to take that out of the negotiating piece of the contract in terms of just working conditions or whatever, and focus on those other things, and then leave that up so that regardless of when your contract is renewed, you don't have to come back and revisit those numbers, and everybody's getting the same cost of living adjustment every year based on an indicator that is chosen at some point, some method, and then basically with a ceiling and a floor in terms of what that adjustment could be. Because certainly if the cost of living goes down, you don't want to take money away from people. And that has happened. You have to make sure you pick the right period so that, you don't pick a period where the cost of living goes down in the month of April over a 12-month period. So, does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well,
Dave?
Oh, okay. Dave.
Yeah, Heather, I'll just a couple of quick comments. And actually, if I could, Terry, through you, I'd like to ask Heather if she remembers the collective bargaining agreement for the contracted teachers. It would be, I believe, 8 or 9 years ago during an economic downturn. There was a contract that was negotiated. It was a 3-year contract. It really did not give the teachers, I would say, what they deserved, but it was what the town could afford. But it was a 3-year contract. We didn't go to this 1-year thing. And they were stuck with that very minuscule increase for that term of that contract. Yeah, they made up for a good part of it in the next contract. But I think, not speaking for Peter, but I think my feeling with what we did this year with the 1-year contracts was not absolutely necessary. I think they should have been negotiated as 3-year contracts, and do the best we could with them and revisit it 3 years from now. As we stated at town meeting, and I think public hearing also, it puts us in a dangerous position to have to be constantly renegotiating these contracts if we keep negotiating 1-year deals. Thank you. Heather, do you remember that? That was my question. Sorry.
Which Heather are we talking to?
Heather Soroka.
Yeah, I was going to say Heather Lemieux wasn't here.
Right.
I was not on school committee then. I don't remember that. I just don't think that the schools consider it a cost of living adjustment. I just think they see it as their increase for the year. I don't think they consider it cost of living. So I'm not sure that that's they call it a COLA every time, but I'm not sure that's how it's seen when they negotiate. I also want to bring up the fact that they're currently constantly negotiating this year with them to make changes in the delivery of services for the students. So to get them live streaming or synchronized learning, they're renegotiating right now. So with the teachers, it was 1 year for that piece, but I think that they've been renegotiating for the year as we've been going along. And I think that when we look at this end of year cap, we'll see that the legal fees for the schools was $62,000 last year. And I think a large portion of that is attributed to the negotiations. But I would like to see the breakdown for that when we get to it. So those are just things to consider, Dave, when we're talking about negotiation for the 1 year. I don't even think that that's set in stone for this year. There are things being tweaked because they want to get them to synchronized learning, and they want to tweak their contract now to get there. So the high school is not synchronized yet. The middle school just went synchronized this week. So
Where are the elementary school?
I thought they've been synchronized. I thought they were synchronized, but I have no idea. I don't have anyone down there. They're not. Evan, unmute yourself.
No, I have a third grader that's not synchronized at all.
Not synchronized. That's Turkey Hill. Okay. But it would be nice to get them into the same place as many other schools have been the entire year. And I think Chris can attest to that with synchronized learning, they're actually just always Zooming.
Yeah.
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 So
My girls are in a charter school.
Yeah.
They're-
So
All right, well, it was, like I said, it was a thought, and I was like, I'm happy to be shot down, but yeah.
well, no, I'm just thinking the cost for the other contracts is so much lower than the cost for the teachers because of the amount of teachers there are. And then
Right.
the school district is not just the teachers, it's the custodial, it's the clerks, it's the secretarial and the paraprofessionals. So if you gave them all, I don't know what that would amount to if we decided to give the police, fire, those unions 3%, and then what 3% translates to the school department. It could be a huge amount of a difference. And I don't know where that comes out of in the budget and how that plays out for Heather when she makes the budgets.
Yeah, actually, Heather, would you mind speaking to that a little bit? I mean, you can just tell me to, pound sand. That's okay.
I would add, I agree with Heather Soroka that even though it's called a COLA every year, it's universally called that in towns through negotiations. It is more of a wage adjustment, and our main driving factor is usually salary comparisons with other comparable towns, as well as if there are retention issues, those types of things, versus a cost of living indicator.
Okay. What about the notion of if you have a 3-year contract, would it still hold the same so that we would do a 3% adjustment this year and then the following 2 years would be based on a cost of living adjustment, or be a true cost of living adjustment and then renegotiate wages at the next round? Otherwise, I mean, you can, but again, it's just a thought. It just, to me, it just seems like we're punishing people for in bad times, and we might be setting ourselves up in what seems like a good time, and then the next year falls apart and everybody's getting a raise and they can't keep all their people. So,
Well, I will add that that's part of the reason why we do financial forecasting.
yep.
So we can see the effect on the budget.
Well, I knew there was a reason why you did financial forecasting. It's nice to hear that you do. All right, Karen is not here, so I don't know if anybody had any off-budget account information that they wanted to discuss tonight.
I sent an email off to Karen, but I think she and I will discuss my questions before I bring them before this committee.
Okay. Evan, I'm sorry, I passed right over introducing you to the group. Welcome to the group. And then basically, I don't know if you've had a chance to go to the,
OneDrive.
thank you. I'm on the cloud thing, but on to the OneDrive just to see most of the documents that Chris has shared up there.
I did. I went through a bunch of them, but not nearly all of them at all.
That's fine. What we will probably be talking about quite a bit in the next month or so is probably related to the fiscal policies, and that was in the last folder that was up there. So if you can find in there the fiscal policies that are part of the Board of Selectmen or the Select Board policies. And the other thing that you can find in there somewhere is the, I think you have the off budget account information in there, right, Chris? Somewhere.
When you say off budget, you mean like the chapter and special revenue funds and stuff?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that should be in there.
Okay.
And grants, all the grants.
Great.
Is Karen expected to come to this meeting? I thought she was.
I think she was planning on it, but I don't see her, and I didn't leave her standing in the waiting room, so. We'll just go ahead then to the town manager report, if there is one.
Sure. I'll give updates, the same ones I gave to the select board, because I don't know if everyone's seen those meetings. So the December 1st meeting, I updated the select board that the police chief got 3 different grants. He received a risk management grant in the amount of $8,000 towards an upgrade of software that the police department uses to store and maintain recordings, and additional cameras for the evidence room and evidence entryway. He also received the Justice Assistance Grant for the body worn cameras in the amount of $36,404. And he's already implemented a policy. He worked with the union on that regarding the use of.
Oh, good.
And the annual grant that's always applied for, the Click It or Ticket grant, and that was approximately $9,800.
Wow.
What do we do with that grant? Like, what's that grant used for?
Enforcement, I believe. It's used for paper. I believe I'd have to get confirmation, but my understanding is it's for shifts to do enforcement of making sure people are using their seatbelt.
Probably pays for a shift of somebody sitting by the side of the road on Lancaster Ave from time to time. Dave?
Yeah, just a quick question to Heather, just to refresh my memory. The police chief and I had an exchange in regards to the cost of storage of data for the cameras. And he, if I remember correctly, he quoted a $700 number for an in-house server. Now, is that for purchase of the equipment and then there's maintenance costs beyond that? Or do you remember? I didn't get real clarification, at least in my mind, what that $700 is going to give us.
Yeah, so that was part of the grant amount for the purchase of that. There would be ongoing maintenance costs, I think, within the $1,000 to $2,000 range, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Does the policy cover like how long we store that information for and when it is stored and who stores it, how it's stored?
There is a requirement of length of time that it's stored that they would have to abide by.
Yeah, but you mentioned that there was a policy written up that was
Yeah, the
agreed to.
policy, I think, is more to deal with use, but
So body cams.
yes, by officers, when they're supposed to be on, where they're not allowed to be on.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's statutory requirements on how long that data is saved.
Yes, yep. There are. Similar to what the public retentions, public records retention would be.
So I guess my question on the storage part of it, do they take the camera off at the end of the night and hook it up to something and then it automatically backs up and in the morning it's charged and backed up and ready to go? Is that how it works?
That's a good question. I could ask the chief.
Okay.
Okay, Heather, did you have more?
Yes. So we also received a gift donation of $10,000 from Richard and Mary Ellen Latart, and it was for use of purchasing remote learning devices for Lunenburg students and any leftover funds toward a food bank. So the school was informed, and they're going to be using that donation towards purchasing new Chromebooks.
Sweet.
On very generous of the Latarts.
Yes.
Update on the local incentive tax increment financing agreement. I contacted the Mass Office of Business Development subsequent to the town meeting to find out the next steps. And the requirement was to forward them certain documents, which I have provided. And I spoke with Bright Farms as well, and they relayed that they're finalizing the purchase of the site, and they're expected to close on that in January. Update on capital projects from fiscal 21. The Martin Police Cruiser has been received, so it needs to be outfitted. The ACO vehicle is as of a couple weeks ago, was in port in Spain, and the expected delivery date is January. The senior center front entrance reconfiguration, that's underway. And the public safety carport extension, we had a meeting, the DPW director, police chief, fire chief, facilities director, and I, with the architect to review the design details and what he needs to know for the specifications that he needs to write up for the project. And everything should be put out to bid around February with a spring construction start. And other updates that were given on December 8th to the select board. We received notification on Saturday, December 5th, that our tax rate for fiscal 21 was certified at $17.74 per thousand. The tax rate, just for reference, for fiscal 20 was $18.12 per thousand. Purchase of the street lights. I contacted Unitil after the town meeting. They need a formal letter of intent from the town in order to proceed. So I submitted a formal letter to them, as well as requesting an updated purchase price of all the street lights. So they'll be proceeding with that.
Heather, do you foresee that we'll be able to pry the depreciation information out of them that we've been after for the last 5 or 6 years as part of this process?
I requested it, so I'll try to receive it, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Unobtainable to date. Let's see, community development block grant. We had, we're part of a regional community block grant for micro enterprise assistance grants for businesses. And these were small grants, up to $10,000 for businesses with no more than 5 employees. So that information is available and so please pass along to any small business owners that you know. And I gave an update to the board on Tuesday as well about going into the budget process and the development of it, of what certain priorities would be from my perspective in the development. It'd be a continuation of the police and fire long-term plans, as well as the previously identified needs last year for additional IT support that would help the school and the town. The use of grant funds that we have available for recycling enforcement coordinator and a minutes clerk that would serve multiple committees that currently don't have any support in that area, as well as one of my
Heather
goals.
perked up.
As well as one of my goals this year is to look at facilities. So possible changes to the facilities budget. On the non-personnel side, we continue to, a significant part will be the Worcester County retirement assessment and other insurances, as well as stormwater engineering costs related to our MS4 permit requirements, and getting back on track with the additional funding for pavement management that's within the operating budget. An update on health insurance is that we were provided, in the fall, we're provided with a conservative, what we should budget for our active health insurance. We don't get the actuals until February, but we were given a 3% increase to budget. So we know that going in, our health insurance should be, for active insurances, should be no more than 3%, which is good. So we've been very fortunate the last 2 years with a decrease one year, and last year it was a 0.6% increase for that. Part of that's attributable to moving forward with the post-65 program, which was moving non-Medicare eligible retirees over from our active group to our Medicare plans. So that will be a significant savings for town and school. And other unknown expenses that I believe expect a significant increase in our pay-as-you-throw program, because this is the end of our contract year. So the whole industry has changed since 10 years ago when we secured the bid and got a 10-year contract. So going into this, we can expect that it will be an increase for the next contract period.
Is that something that you're talking about, the recycling piece that would be part of the town budget? Or are you talking about trying to pick up more of the cost in the town budget? Or are you just talking about overall there will be an increase?
Overall, the program itself.
Okay.
I thought you did some renegotiations of that a couple of years back, even though we were under contract.
We negotiated on the recycling, which because of the changes to the recycling industry, due to the China's market changes with the National Sword Program, we negotiated a recycling rate, but that was until the end of this contract as well.
Heather, is there an opportunity as part of that negotiations to set up a site where town folks can bring things like TVs and couches and everything else that tends to end up in the parks and
We
conservation
already
land?
we already belong to the Devons Center. We pay towards being a member of that, the hazardous household waste. So those items people can bring to that center for minimal costs.
That includes like mattresses and couches and stuff?
There's a whole list on the website, our website. Let's see if I can pull it up.
The regional household hazardous waste.
Yes.
Okay. It's funny, I don't see the list. I just see the, oh, materials. Okay.
I guess you don't have to answer it now. It's just that if it's not, perhaps there's some way at this time in negotiations where we could set up something like that.
Yeah, I want to say that it looks, I don't see furniture. I just see appliances and humidifiers and stuff like that. I don't see.
Yeah, it's a lot of cleaners and chemicals, and
Yeah, hazardous stuff. Yeah.
but there are electronics as part of that.
Yeah, that's
But you're
hazardous.
talking
Yeah, the couches that get thrown out in the
and furniture.
Yeah,
the stuff that goes in the woods.
Yeah, that guy talking about at the town meeting.
That was something different. That was from the old farm that
Oh.
town purchased it from.
and the
Okay.
other question I had was what caused the rate per thousand to go down by like 2%?
It's a matter of calculating all the revenues coming in and the levy.
Yeah, basically it also involves, if the assessor says that our value is $500,000 and we have 500 houses and we're going to, the value of these houses is this high. And then, so it basically is like you're taking the rate and the valuation to get to the levy amount. So basically you're doing some division in there to say that it's the rate, your taxes may not go down. Because
I guess my question was, is it
Yeah.
just we can expect that the valuation on our real estate is to go up, therefore
No, the valuation actually went up. So the rate went down so that you get the same amount.
I think that's what
Or-
I'm saying.
Or people are building really nicer houses. So all those guys are going to be paying a lot more money. And then the valuation of yours is not, you're not as big a contributor to the tax base.
Good.
That's the only way I can describe it, but Heather does a better job, so.
No, you did a better job than I could.
But basically there's a whole lot of math. So then, like some people will look and they'll say, God, the rate went up like $2. And it's like, yeah, the rate went up, but the valuation went way down. So you have to take everything all together. It's those assessors, I don't know what they do over there at their meetings, but they come up with the number that we have to get to. And then that's the calculations go in with, like where your house falls on the list of the 500 houses in town, and if yours is the cheapest, then your taxes will probably go down. So overall, but anyway, did you have more, Heather?
That's all I had for tonight.
Okay, then I'm just gonna, I know that we just put the CARES Act reimbursements on there just to see that, like we're on target with getting as much money out of this as we possibly can to cover our charges. Do we have any surprise charges or anything that was coming up in the last month or so?
I can't think of surprise charges. We have additional protective equipment that we were getting, not substantial amount, and possible testing kits.
I think I did also see that there was a meeting with the Department of Education today regarding whether or not additional funding for meals was going to be available or extended. And I don't know if that was part of the same thing or that's just something on the state level. But since there's nobody here from the school committee, I can't ask them. All right. Does anybody else have any questions or anything for Heather?
Heather, have we had any more conversation with our legislative delegation about the grant money that's sitting in bonds that were earmarked for a couple of the capital projects? I know the answer you gave me a couple weeks ago. I'm just wondering if there's been any more communication.
Nothing since a couple weeks ago. There was $25,000 included in the budget as an earmark for the school fire alarm upgrade. But the original request was a lot more than $25,000.
Right. And my understanding was that there was the firefighter gear that was in the previous budget, wasn't it? Or was it in this same budget? And I thought that was 100,000.
It was a previous bond.
Okay. So that's still waiting to be released from that bond.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
So I had something that I was going to mention in committee reports. That should I do it now, or is Heather going to drop?
Sure, because I mean, that'll just take us right into it, so you can start.
Okay, so as part of the open space committee, the last meeting they had, one of the articles was whether to request that the select board exercise right of first refusal or not on a portion of what is Lanny Orchard, Flat Hill Orchards on Flat Hill Road. And one of the things I discussed at the end of that meeting with them is, and I said I would bring it to Finance Committee, is I wonder if what we should be doing as part of policy or planning is to start to set up special reserve funds, if it's possible, for some of these bigger properties that could become available in the future. If like the entire orchard or one of these big farms would become available, there's good reason why the town might be interested in it. And if we had kind of put aside that, 25,000 or 100,000 or whatever it is every year, we would have that base by which to maybe either, in the case of the Flat Hill, we could probably buy that, decide whether we want, carve it up how we want, and then still be able to sell it to the developer, if we chose not to do something. But we tend to get into these very compressed timeframes when properties become on the market. And I was just wondering if there was a way of kind of setting aside monies for some of these large properties that in the future could become available.
Was that a question to Heather or was that a question to the committee?
So I guess it's a question to the committee, whether we think that's a good idea. And then the question to Heather is whether there is a legal way by which to set up a reserve fund that would account for something like that.
I would think, and Heather can correct me on this, if the issue with doing a reserve fund, actually there might not be an issue with doing a reserve fund. If it was set up as a revolving account, I think that would be okay, but wouldn't it have to be voted out at town meeting if it was a reserve fund?
You're talking about a reserve fund that's part of the operating budget that could be accessed during the year, or would require a town meeting vote to take out of?
I guess, you can tell me what the right fund might be, but some way by which you could more quickly make some decisions on properties that, have these short timeframes and tend to sometimes make it in time for town meeting and other times kind of are strategically announced to to kind of make it difficult for town meeting to act on. But it's some kind of planning towards, there are properties in town ultimately we would probably want to buy when they come out of 61A. Is there a way of kind of setting up money in a bank to kind of, not have to put for a borrowing bill or something like that?
I would have to think on that a little. My mind goes towards accounts that the Conservation Commission has that they can access for different uses, which are more readily accessible. But yeah, as far as putting it in the operating budget, I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, and I think basically it's come forward several times to participate using the Community Preservation Act, and then basically that's an amount on top of the tax amount that would be the only way that you would be able to put money in there, and then a committee that would be charged with oversight of that would be able to have funds come out of that. I know that was looked into, I believe, last year. And has been looked into from time to time. And usually with that, there's also the potential for state funding matching to some extent. So that might be another way to investigate it. The other,
I think that still requires a town meeting vote, though, Terry.
does it,
Yeah,
to spend it?
To spend it on projects.
It does require a vote?
I've seen it in other towns where they have articles on their warrants for taking CPA money out of to spend on.
Okay. And then basically can you just, for my own personal edification, before Dave confuses me with facts, the 61A process, could you describe that? Like basically, so if a farm or somebody with a huge property who had it in 61A wanted to come out of 61A, that means that they're anticipating paying back to the town the amounts that weren't taxed. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And does that, but that doesn't happen until the sale of the property, or they have to take it out?
Right. Until the sale of the property, there's a tax rollback calculated by the assessors that's provided to them as part of that closing.
All right, and then so that basically, but it's not a big enough number that the tax rollback money would be anything that would be helpful to the town being able to participate in or use funds like that to potentially fund a fund for future purchase of property.
As far as funneling that money into an account, you're saying?
Yeah. So if you've got somebody who comes out of chapter and rather than throwing those funds directly into the operating budget, to do a set aside for future opportunities for potential participation in exercising the right of first refusal.
I still think that would be.
That wouldn't be legal?
But yeah, I don't know about illegal, but yeah.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I may have a second comment, but I was going to make an additional comment to the Preservation Act and my personal problem with it. And that is the fact that any revenues collected and deposited into that account have to be split between certain categories. You put $100,000 in there, seemingly thinking it's going to go towards purchase of land. It's not. It's a percentage of that it has to be allocated to certain purposes within the act. I do remember, though, that back when the middle high school funding was imminent, there were quite a few people asking, you know, and at the time, finances were fairly decent in town. We were putting away money in stabilization funds, so on and so forth. And the question was asked a number of times, why can't we set up a savings account to help offset the cost of this very expensive school? And there were answers from both sides of the fence, one saying that no, that can't be done. The other side of the fence was say it definitely can be done. So I think, I don't know if this committee does it or we ask the town manager to do it or how it happens. But if there's a will, there's a way to do just about anything if you know what the process is and you talk to the right people. Thank you.
I would assume that, you know, if there's a way to do it, Brendan Kibbe should know it.
Well, so Brendan was part of the discussion, and he thought perhaps there was a way. The other question is whether there's a willingness of the town to kind of, you know, save for that kind of future investment. You know, it's kind of the character of the town with the agricultural and, you know, these nice pieces of farmland, it's et cetera. But he did ask that I, you know, bring it forward here and see if there was, you know, I was thinking like we save for the fire trucks, you know, you said there was an account for that. Is there a similar type of account that could be set up for use of land?
And
I think
Chris, I
there
don't want to
is.
cut you off, but as a funding source for an account like that, I think what would fly very well in the town's eyes, if they agree with saving the money in the first place, would be to tie the amount that goes into that account to a percentage of a revenue source, such as we do with the excise tax into, I think it's pavement management. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what we're doing. But if you have those two mechanisms, you have the savings account and you say you're going to take 2%, 3%, 5% of this revenue source on an annual basis and deposit it into this land trust account, then, you know, it's very understandable.
Yeah, it is. And I think basically the big concern was not creating a new revenue source to do it. And that was the reason why the board didn't support, or certainly the, I don't remember who all supported and didn't support the CPA, but the Community Preservation Act. But I don't even know if it went to town meeting.
No,
I don't think it made it past the select board. So because of the fact that it would be an additional amount on top of the tax rate. Although actually with the tax rate going down, who knows, maybe people would be more open to hear something like that this year.
Except when they open their tax bill and see how much more it is, then
Well,
maybe
there's
not.
always that, yeah. So how did that happen? My house is worth more. But no, I mean, basically, it would be interesting to try to find a way to do that. That's why I was just wondering if it was possible when they came out of, but that we don't have enough. Actually, I don't know how do you have an idea, Heather, how quickly lands are coming out of chapter?
Every year is different. Yeah, it all depends. Like we've had a couple just in the last couple months, but sometimes none at all. Yeah.
Right.
But at one point, the Open Space Committee had, I think, looked at or wanted to review all the lands in chapter to have a list and identify which parcels, if they became available, they were interested in.
They did mention that. So yes, I think they've either done that or plan to do that. And that would be, I think, part of this whole process is if they have identified that these are the ones they might be interested in, what might be the types of costs for those, and should we start saving towards making it a palatable purchase when you do try to buy it.
Right. And if the town wants it bad enough, I mean, basically, historically, it's always been either a borrowing or it's usually a borrowing. So, So if we keep our rate low, we want to keep our bond rating down, then maybe it won't be impossible. But the other thing is, I don't know what the value of the land is coming out of chapter. So I don't know what we're talking about in terms of the amount of money that would have to be on hand. The other thing that would concern me is about with the Conservation Committee or trying to use any account through them is that, and I could be wrong about this as well, but it was my understanding that any funds spent by the Conservation Commission tended to need to be following the rules of the Conservation Committee, which means that there's just passive use. So you can't like use it for the same way you might use a more active parcel.
Yeah, my thought was not to necessarily tie it to conservation, because perhaps what you want to do is buy farmland and, you know, set up some opportunity for folks to come and farm on it, because it's good
Right.
agricultural land,
Right.
and have a revenue source associated with it, but you'd have to also buy it. Which was one of the ideas behind that plot on Flat Hill, is that perhaps that would be, you know, it was deemed as like prime agricultural soil, and there's not much of that left. So, you know, it's one of the downfalls of selling that property,
Right.
or putting homes on that property, I guess.
Okay. Any other comments, questions for Heather on any of those? Committee reports other than open space? Did you have more from open space, Chris? I should ask. No. Okay. Dave?
I've got 3 this evening. Pretty much real quick ones on each one. Capital planning got canceled on Tuesday evening because of a glitch in the link to the meeting. Inadvertently, the link to the previous meeting a couple weeks ago was put on the agenda, so we were forced to cancel. That meeting has been moved to next Tuesday night at, I believe it's 5:30. TC Passios Committee has met once, I believe, since our last meeting. It could be twice. I keep losing track because we keep jumping our schedule around. The architects and engineers are in the process of, or were signed off, I should say, on the uses of the building and the adjacencies. They're now revisiting with departments on fixtures and the amenities for the different areas. And then they're coming back to the committee. We're going to be meeting twice. I believe it's next week, Monday and Wednesday or Thursday, to go over the finishes and fixtures with the architects, so that after that week, they will be starting to put numbers to the renovations. So it looks like we'll start seeing some numbers right after the first of the year associated with this project. And a clear goal at this point of the committee is to present an article with a proposal with the dollar amount fixed to it for the project to convert Passios into the uses that have been identified. Parks Commission has had one meeting since our last meeting. We talked about youth sports rates for the next season and set those so that the entities that need to start figuring out what their fees are going to be for the next season can start their work. We have another meeting coming up on the 14th. We've got a number of items that we'll be talking about there, and hoping to put together some type of a questionnaire or outreach document for the Marshall Park project to start getting some input from the public. That's it for me tonight.
Dave, you had another parks meeting with the board, the select board as well.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry about that. We had a joint meeting. We voted to add fill our final seat. Anna Lockwood is our 5th member on that committee. commission, I should say. So we now have a full commission going forward. The second agenda item for the joint meeting was discussing the skateboard park. Very good conversation, getting everybody up to speed on some of the history and where we're at now, and a little bit of discussion on where we're going forward. One point that was very clear was that the entire select board was not on the board when the original presentation by that group was made. So that meeting helped bring them up to date and gave them some information that they didn't have because they weren't part of the conversation earlier. It's still, from my perspective personally, still up in the air as to where this is going to be located. But I think everybody in attendance was committed to seeing it happen. We just haven't settled or agreed on a location.
Have
Dave,
they
can
re-
I ask a question on the TC Pasio's building reuse? You said the plan was to have a number. I assume you meant in time for town meeting, but if so, how far in advance of town meeting do you see that happening?
We did discuss that, Chris, and I don't remember the exact dates. But we were, what we did in that discussion is we started with the date of Springtown meeting and we worked our deadlines backwards from there so that there was time for input and advertising of the project well in advance of town meeting, and to make sure that an article gets into the warrant properly. So, once we get into January, things are going to come together pretty quickly. The next hurdle, once we start getting numbers in January, is for the committee to look at the bottom line number and say, yeah, we can afford that, we'll go forward, or no, we can't afford that, and then we got to go back through and figure out cost saving measures. So that's one of the things that will be need to be dealt with, I would say, middle of January. So I'm thinking, if I remember correctly, and I'd have to run back through the meeting again, I think we're going to have a pretty good idea mid-February, end of February at the latest, as to where this project stands and be able to start advertising it to the public.
And what's the process by which you would say whether you can afford it or not? Seems a little bit subjective.
It is totally subjective. I don't know exactly what that process is going to entail. I think it's going to be a combination discussion between the committee and the town manager as to what the funding sources potentially are going to be for this, and that's something that I think Peter had hoped that there'd be a number sooner, so that it could go through the debt policy procedure that he's been trying to put together, so that there would be a document that would show how that expenditure is going to affect our operating budget going forward. So it's going to be a moving target. I can't answer that question, to tell you the truth.
It would seem that at some point it would come before this committee, and with a busy spring, I was wondering when that might be.
The absolute latest I can foresee would be when it becomes an article and it's part of the warrant. Hopefully we can do it before that, so that this committee can weigh in on it before it is finalized and goes to town meeting.
Okay.
That would be my wish.
Yeah, the closing of the warrant is going to be mid-March.
Right. So like I said, if we can get enough together to have a proposal mid-February or early February, then we'll be able to kick the wheels for almost a month before the warrant closes. That's not a lot of time, but.
Sorry.
Well, I
I'd
guess
like
my
for
question,
an article like this that, when the when the warrant article closes, there is a number in it. It's not kind of a to be determined later number that gets put in, a couple weeks before town meeting.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Chris. I've always been bothered by placeholders that don't have numbers with them when they're printed.
I mean, there's some that I understand, but this one I would not understand.
Did you, Chris, have you had a chance to, I know I've been remiss in trying to get together with you over this, but have you had an opportunity to sit down and take a look at what a matrix might look like for?
Well, I think the major part of it would be that one pager that comes out of that,
Southborough?
yeah, I think it was Northborough.
Northborough?
Yeah, I'm from Southborough, so
Oh, okay.
confused Northborough, Southborough. I think that would be kind of a major part of it, but then, for something the size of this, I think you got to look at what are the effects on other town buildings, operating costs, things like that, over 20 years or whatever the 30 years, whatever it is that we think of.
Okay.
Because this would make town hall and other buildings vacant.
I think it would make town hall vacant. It would make, would the
Ritter.
Ritter be vacant?
Yes.
And would Brooks be totally vacant?
I believe so, but I don't honestly remember. There was a brief discussion about that, and I think John Wanda's office was rolled into the school office area, but I don't remember for sure. Heather might remember one way or the other.
I don't recall seeing an office for the facilities director for the school in the plan.
Okay.
Why, were you thinking that would be a good place to put the skate park?
I have a question about the skate park.
Okay, Heather.
Did they give you an amount that they've raised so far, and what's their timeline, even though they have no location to put it right now? When are they thinking they're going to put it somewhere?
They believe they're going to be ready 2 years from now, funding wise.
And they've raised 63,000, I think is what they said.
And how much do they need?
A lot more than 63,000.
No, I thought it was like 500,000.
It depends. Part of the problem here is the tug of war between parks and that organization as to what size this park is ultimately going to end up being. I mean, we started out, the number is anywhere from 5,000 square feet up to 10,000 square feet. And there's been pushback in both directions on the appropriate size for a town this size. And I think we're still going to have some additional discussion about that going forward.
Well, is Parks going to be maintaining it?
That's still up for discussion as depending on where it ends up. We have offered Marshall Park as our preferred location. The other locations, if what I reviewed at the Board of Selectmen's video on the approval from that board a number of 2 years ago, is that the 3 locations in play actually is not on the Passios property. It's on the school control property that the playground is on, an area behind Passios, or on the other side of Turkey Hill Elementary on school property also.
And that was in the original meeting?
Yes.
And that was what they brought to the school, the select board, right? Those were the locations that they were asking for, or is that what the select
They-
board?
They were asking for what they were describing as in front of Passios, which originally I was thinking that it was on the Passios property itself, but it was not if you go back to that video, because it was the part of the piece that the playground is on, and that's under care and custody of the school committee still. It would be that kind of, there's a little bit of room right up to the road, but most of it is behind the playground,
Okay.
behind and to the right when you're looking at the playground. The Passios property boundary is very close to the road gate on the road going in, the access road to the front door of the school.
Okay.
And town manager can supervise it because it will be right outside her office.
All right.
You can just look at it, right, and check it out, then walk out there and say, no trouble, no trouble.
Heather, any comments? Heather, were
Yeah.
you?
That would be a fear of hers, yes.
Yeah, can you imagine?
So
Um,
those are locations that they did bring to the select board, as well as they had discussions with the school about locations on the school property.
Right, Turkey Hill, I remember that. I just don't remember anybody saying, yes, you couldn't be on any of those properties. So far, they have, so no, the school hasn't given them a permission to go on their properties, correct?
That wasn't clearly answered at the joint meeting, but that is
Not
my
sure what you're
understanding.
saying.
They do not have the okay from the school department.
Yeah,
That's what
school department was not represented at the meeting that was joint with the parks and the select board, so.
Right. And I
School
don't
property-
what was that, Heather?
Which school property are you talking about?
Well, I didn't think they had any permissions to on the playground or the Turkey Hill Elementary School area.
So you're thinking that the area by Passios where they were thinking they were putting it.
Well, there's that, and then I know that I remember they initially wanted it to go near Turkey Hill as well, but I don't think that the school gave them permission for either.
So the Turkey Hill, correct. I don't believe they ever were given permission regarding that land. The land that they identified falls within the boundaries of the town meeting vote that was taken to transfer the Passios building to the select board.
Okay.
Heather,
Okay.
but I went back and I listened to the entire video section in their presentation to the Board of Selectmen. What was it, a year and a half, 2 years ago? And that was not the motion that was voted at that meeting. We
Well, it'd be worth a
can
look,
look it
but,
over. Yeah, we'll look it over
Yeah.
some more.
yeah.
That's
Okay.
those are the boundaries that they were given, though.
Okay.
But it's not what was approved, what was, whatever. We'll deal with it later. Thank you.
Yeah.
Heather
Okay.
Lemieux, did I hear that the assessor's map has not been updated based on town vote to repartition that town property?
It would have to be separated and recorded for that to happen. So
And it wasn't?
correct, but the survey work was part of the TC Passios building design project.
So basically, as part of the TCP design project, that may happen.
Correct.
So
That
it's
it would
if the
be-
project goes forward.
Right, it would be required to separate out that parcel instead of being one large parcel.
And the
Okay,
TC
but that would be a future subdivision of that school property, not a current state division of it.
Well, that was tough, because it's
Heather,
been
will you
voted.
correct
Yeah, in
me
theory,
if I'm wrong. The land under the building is still under the care and custody of the school department. Is that correct, or is that?
That's
I
not
thought-
correct.
It's not, okay, but on the assessor's map, it is. And
one
they
part?
have, in fact, if you go on GIS maps off of their website, off the assessor's page, the old high school is still there.
Yeah, I think that was Chris's point, was that it's not updated to reflect the change that was voted.
Right.
So, and that basically that wouldn't happen until the surveying was completed?
The survey was complete, she said, but the assessor's map never separated and recorded. But the survey work was done as part of the TC Passios project, is what Heather just said.
Which happened recently.
Right.
Right.
But the transfer was years ago because Dr. Berthium was the chair at the time.
Correct.
So that was at least 4 years ago, I believe.
I thought they just
Survey was
transferred the
never
building,
done.
not the land.
And the survey was never done after that town meeting vote, which would be required to be part of that process.
The boundaries that our engineers, as the TC Passios member, the boundaries that our engineers are working with are the boundaries that were created for the middle high school project, separating or identifying the plot that the middle high school was to sit on. And that did show boundaries separating Passios out, but it was never finalized or recorded. Is that correct, Heather?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's where the disconnect is.
But it will be.
Yes, that's one of the goals that was stated very early on by the TC Passios redesign committee, that would be part of our project.
Yeah, but if the project did not go forward, if it was not voted at town meeting to proceed, would the new property line be still established, or it would have no need to? It would remain school
Yep.
property?
Yeah, that would be up to town manager. That wouldn't be up to our committee.
That would also be, since it was already voted, so it's not school, then it would be basically just updating the information based on the survey, I would think. Because it's already, the transfer itself has already occurred, so the transfer itself means that it belongs to the select board.
Right. And it's operated that way since that town meeting vote.
So basically, it's just getting all the lines up and getting all the information up to the GIS. Which is more information than I ever wanted to have as a town resident. All right.
The issue never mind. We'll talk about this more later as the project moves forward, because there are some issues because of the access road that will come around the front of Passios to tie parking and everything together. But we'll discuss that another time.
And just to be clear, Chris, was there someplace that you were going with your questions that you could get to tonight with additional questions, or that you need more information going forward?
Well, what would folks on the committee like to see on a kind of major building project from the perspective of what's in that rubric for decision-making purposes?
In regards to outreach from the committee, or
Well,
that
no,
what you're
one of-
thinking of? Or?
Well, you know, like how you guys are coming up with the debt policy
Yeah.
thing, you know, you guys are working on that project, and Chris and I are supposed to be working on a rubric for just what to look at in order to come to a recommendation about a major building job like this. So when we go to recommend approval, what are the things that should be in the rubric that we're making that determination based on?
But I also thought Chris wanted to be able to provide that to the town people, like at a town meeting. So they had that one pager, so they knew exactly, had all the answers to some questions, like frequently asked questions, like for capital planning, the
Right.
one page, right, Chris? Yeah.
Yeah.
So other than like how it affects other town buildings, you were operating costs over 20 to 30 years. He's talking about stuff like that. Do you guys have any other suggestions for his one pager?
Or it could be 2 pages and for a major, or 3 pages,
Right.
whatever.
For this one, it could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Like how the traffic flow is.
That's
Yeah,
always a good one. Especially
They're
with the
just
discussion around-
finishing up a traffic study for the Passios project.
The
I mean,
school,
I guess I was thinking it would be more from a financial perspective because we are the finance committee.
right.
So long-term operational cost, uppers or downers based on this impact, what's the abandoned buildings, what else, what other kind of things would have financial impacts that would be worth making sure we've compiled so that we can make our decisions and recommendations, as well as pass that on to folks that haven't been following either us or the building committee, but do go to town meeting and want to make an informed decision.
Basically, yeah, so probably something in there about, like where our bond rating is and what the effective rate of what the effective rate of,
Borrowing.
yeah, the rate of borrowing, the length of the borrowing, and what the effect on the tax rate is. Cost of heating, cost of, are we going to be putting solar panels on the roof? It's going to become, like what's the energy efficiency on it? Will the town employees have to wear their coats to work like they used to? I just
Terry,
remember
maybe we can get together over the holiday breaks to work this.
Yeah, no, that would be fine with me, and actually
Bring
that
it
would
forward
be,
in January.
yeah, that would be perfect. I'm bound to take time off eventually. They're going to throw me out of the office. Right. Let's move on from that for now. And then we'll come back with a rubric on that and just move on to, are there any other committee reports? I'm fading fast.
Terry,
Come
not so much a committee report as much as something at some point that this committee needs to do, is that with the retirement of John Henshaw, we don't have a liaison to the police and fire that I remember we identified. So that's something we need to, I think we should deal with in the near future.
Yeah, I should ask Evan. Evan, how do you feel about being the finance committee liaison to the police and fire? I did already actually at town meeting, I did tell the two chiefs that I would pick up that role while we had the vacancy, and what it all basically involves is you're welcome to go have coffee with them anytime. They're always very open to answering any kind of questions anybody might have. But after doing that, my contact with them was primarily just an email on a regular, anything coming up. Does the pumper need to be fixed? Like what's anything of a financial nature, just to let them know that we're aware of what's going on, so that at some point there is an account that sometimes they try to hit us up for repairs through, that we do have access to approving purchase. I think it's up to the account itself, I think has $50,000 in it, and we try to not approve use of it. But if somebody has an emergency come up that's not covered in the operating budget, and it's usually going to be fire or police, we'll come forward with a request to transfer it from the reserve account to their operating account. If you're not ready to pick up that kind of a liaison role, then I'm happy to continue with it. It's whatever your pleasure is. But if you say no to this, then I might make you write the letter for the finance committee to go into the town meeting report.
No, that sounds fine. I wouldn't mind doing that at all.
Okay, very good.
Not so much the latter.
That one's always a struggle, and we don't have Michelle here to do it this year, so. And that's going to be another one that we have to stay on top of, because that'll have to be ready to go by March. So. So anyway, so that takes care of that. Thank you, Dave. And I'm sorry, Heather Stroker, were you about to ask or say something? No?
I was just gonna remind you that the Pats game is on at 8:30.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, moving right along. I know that I did ask Damon if he wanted to come and discuss the the fiscal policies at all this evening. I don't know, Dave, is there a rush on it anymore, or is there, we're just gonna let it go until the January?
Well, I think it'll be pushed off into January, but I'm kind of disappointed the last conversation that we had at CPC that, when we initially brought it up, it sounded like the committee was ready to push it forward quickly, and maybe the fiscal year that we're starting to work on now is unrealistically premature to try to get the new policy in place, but it could have been done. So I think we're looking at the fiscal 2022 budget for any changes to capital dollar amounts and things to take effect. I think there will be some interesting projects to look at and how they would be affected if we change the number for 2021. And I'll have some comments on that in CPC meetings and Finance Committee after that meeting.
Okay. I mean, basically, whether there's changes made at the CPC or not, the fact that there's a $10,000 floor doesn't mean that the $10,000 floor has to stand. I mean, it could be that the town manager could make an implementation through the operating budget to fund some of the facility things, if that seemed to be the way to go.
Right.
And that you would just basically identify for the capital plan projects that exceeded the $30,000 threshold.
As we move forward into the budget season, and I know Heather Lemieux's listening, so I will have a couple of questions related to this, but I'll bring it up now just so we're all thinking about it. 2 or 3 budget cycles ago, there was a concerted effort to bolster the facilities budget to try to address some of the envelope issues of the buildings and try to get a little bit more work done to preserve the buildings as we slowly tried to figure out how we were going to fund and or which buildings we were going to repair. That, in my eyes, was the precursor to moving small capital projects out of the capital budget and into a budget line like facilities. I don't believe that line item has been added to from that respect in the last couple of years, but Heather could correct me if I'm wrong. But I think we should be looking in that direction, taking and adding dollars to operating budgets where we know that there are things that over time end up being capital projects because they're not taken care of in smaller dollar amounts over, say, a 3-year period within the budget.
Right. And I believe that came up at the last meeting as well. And I think that makes a lot of sense to go in that direction.
Right.
And hopefully we will. All right. So we have 7 minutes to go. So moving on from that, is there any public comment from anybody on the committee aside from Heather talking about how close the Patriots game is? No public comment from anybody on the committee. Then basically it looks like our next meeting will be January the 14th in 2021. That being the case, unless anybody wants to get together next week, which I don't think that we really have anything that we need to do next week. And quite frankly, January 14th is going to be really the kickoff of next season. So it looks like the 21st we'll be getting the 5-year forecast. So we're going right into budget season.
Terry, can we commit to, or can I ask you to commit to putting policy discussion just as an item on the agenda for the next couple of meetings, just so we can, kick it off and then probably have to, set it aside when we really get busy with the budget, but at least get some initial discussion started.
Happy to.
Thank you.
Okay, well, okay, so anyway, so I hope you all have a great Christmas. Have a great New Year's. Stay safe, stay happy. Chris, I'll be in touch, or you can be in touch with me about the rubric and
Any public comment from the public?
There's no one
Is there any
here.
Public?
I don't see anybody here, but
is there any public comment from the public? There's no public comment there's no public
Dave,
except for the Lunenburg paper.
yeah, I don't see Dave though. He's not here.
Dave's not here. There's nobody in the waiting room and there's no emails. There is no public comment from the public. Yeah, isn't it awful? My mother doesn't even call in and say hi, All right, so with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so I have Jay second, Dave making the motion to approve. Chris,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Evan,
Hi.
and I for myself. So we'll see you in about a month. Have a great
Everybody, see
holiday
everybody
season.
next year.
Merry Christmas.
Bye, everyone.
Aye.
Good night.